This is the video lecture assignment for LS 610. I'm Maggie Flynn and will be reviewing Chapter 7 of the Tootin Social Media Marketing text, specifically looking at social publishing and the content value calendar. Before we dive in, I want to give a brief overview of what to expect in this video. First, we'll look at and define some key terms and focus points. Next, we'll look at some examples of the content ladder as well as what we see in its uses and why this matters. And lastly, we'll examine the practical implications for nonprofit organizations. This picture on the screen is a figure from our textbook on page 245. I'm assuming most folks are familiar with basic operations of a ladder. If you're scared of heights like me, try to avoid them. But for our purposes, the lowest rung on the ladder represents the lowest value of content, and the highest rung on the ladder would then represent the highest value of content. So typically, that highest rung is there because of originality and substance of the content. There's something of value that's provided. It's stimulating, it's engaging, it's relevant, and it's participatory. So, jumping back down to the bottom rung of that ladder is what we call or what's known as filler content. Filler content typically is not original, but rather it's curated or repurposed content. So, this could include something like sharing a partner organization's post to an Instagram story. So, while it's not incredibly high in value, it does still serve a purpose. And it shows some self awareness and scope outside of one's own interests as an organization or as an entity. I kind of like to think of filler content just like packaging filler you might get in an Amazon package. It's not the part you were most excited about for your package, but it does serve a purpose. I'd really miss it if it wasn't there. My package had to fill up the entire box by itself, or if it had to bounce around waiting to just sort of chip and break. So, like I said, it really does serve a purpose. The right side of the screen here, you'll see a post from the Doctor of Medical Science program at University of Lynchburg, which is where I work. And just for context, our marketing person Liam recently moved on to different roles. So I've been roped into helping with some of the social media and marketing content. So it's been kind of fun to examine our content and strategy through this context of the content value ladder. So for us in the DMSC, filler content might look like, reposting content that our students, alumni, our faculty, our regional and national organizations post and maybe tag us in. This screenshot here is a post on LinkedIn. So the video is obviously not something we created, but it is spotlighting some of our PAs. So we use this curated content to kind of help get our name out there. The next rung up on the ladder is considered basic content, which is original, unlike filler content, but it's still lower value, or what I kind of like to describe as meh. It's okay, but not necessarily anything special, and it doesn't hold much weight or really establish any sort of authority of the subject matter. For the DMSC, I consider this post on the screen about the start of our January academic term a good example of basic content. It is original, but it's really only relevant to a specific group of our audience for a specific amount of time. It doesn't really show that, we're an expert in the area of PA medicine or with the DMSC degree, so it's not super memorable. Authority building content is the third rung on the ladder, and I think that's where we really start to see some impact in the content. The text describes this as original content that positions the sponsoring entity as an authority on the subject. So, this content matter, I think, is really serves as reputation building and maintaining. For DMSC social content, this might include something like a spotlight of our student and alumni publications in the monthly PA journals that post the research roundup on your left. So keep in mind this is not entirely original content, because obviously those articles belong to the students and the alumni, but it's bringing those pieces together to create something original, which shows the impact of the kinds of things that DMSE students are up to and that you can accomplish with this degree. This is a good example, a reminder that, ladders build on one another and you can't get to the top rung without those, lower rungs. So they really do build and grow off of one another. Another example of authority building content could be the LinkedIn post on the right, and that was a post promoting the National Annual Physician Assistants Conference, where the DMSC will be a premium sponsor and a presenter. So that goes to show that the DMSC is sort of, a valued expert in the area. They're at these local events or national events, I should say, and really adding some value there. The next rung on the ladder includes pillar content, which creates a solid foundation blocks through original content, and that continues to attract viewers over time. So these sort of posts are what are known as compounding posts because of that growth over time through things like shares, retweets, engagements, and other interactions. For any organization, but I think particularly for nonprofits, this content is crucial because it ties into the organization's overall mission. What that organization continues to highlight and showcase through their content, whether it's on social media or otherwise, it defines its presence in those spaces. So if this doesn't reflect the overall organizational mission, your content strategy, doesn't really match up with your strategic plan, with your mission, those sort of things. For the DMSE, an example of pillar content that's seen on the screen there looks something like student and alumni success stories. These show the value in our degree and give some context for our audience of, this is something that you could do, something they could see themselves doing. Flagship content, the top rung of that ladder, is original, authority building, pillar content. So that hits every single one of the rungs below and it builds off of all those other content levels. This is content that may be considered groundbreaking or pioneering work that helps shape public opinion over time. So, flagship content is what's known as evergreen, then, because it just doesn't go bad, but it does get better with age. So this type of content speaks to, an organization's mission, but it also sets and defines its vision for the future. For some background context on the Doctor of Medical Science degree, it's a relatively new degree specifically created as a terminal degree for physician assistants. So the actions and steps we take now are determining what the future profession of PA medicine will look like. And we want our content to show that. So our flagship content includes things like student alumni and alumni success stories, similar to our pillar content, but I think more specifically, it highlights the groundbreaking and precedent setting achievements that PAs with our degree are accomplishing. So the screenshot of this LinkedIn post. That includes an update where an alumna was included as part of a global health team within her organization where she works professionally, and she was the first PA in this position. So those are the kind of flagship content that show value in our degree, that again gives our potential audience something of value where they can see themselves, and they can start to see a future there. After looking at each rung on the ladder, it's important to reflect on what having high value content means for an organization, what that looks like, and why it matters. So on the right, you'll see five popular types of pillar content, high value content that the text describes as high value because these types address an audience need and present easily digestible, usable info. So this could include something like a how-to article, a definition article, a glossary article, a theory article, or a list article. And any of these can be repurposed. Maybe they get turned around into more of a social media post. Maybe there are actual article posts. Depends on the type of content you're creating, but those all have really high value and high impact areas across the board. The text also notes that not all high performing or high value content looks the same. So while those five examples are great, that's not your only formula answer to having great content. It depends on the industry and it depends on the audience. The best content for the Lynchburg Doctor of Medical Science is certainly not going to perform as well on a page for an animal shelter or even for a pre med undergraduate program. But a few of the characteristics that tend to remain constant for great content include things like having a tactical component, something that explains info or provides instruction, gives advice. It includes not having an expiration date, having that evergreen component. And it also includes broad, not getting too niche. And then lastly, it includes having content that is engaging, is experiential, it's relevant, and again, adds that value. So, after looking at each rung on the ladder, it's important to reflect on what having high value content means for an organization, as I said, and that looks different for each entity. I hope this has helped provide some context on the content value ladder. And to close us out, I have an example of what I consider the highest value content, which is an adorable pic of my dog. Thanks for tuning in.